Hey Optimancers, Chris here. So, if you were a DM and you're running a campaign where the characters start at level 1, then I would presume the characters are either starting out with their class's base equipment or rolling for starting gold and then buying equipment out of the player's handbook, which either or they're going to end up being of similar value. And then during the campaign, the characters are going to discover or earn treasure in the form of gold or items that they can sell or convert to gold pieces, or they find magic items that can enhance the mechanical strength of those characters. So our challenge as a DM is to determine how much of this treasure do we provide to our player characters in order to have a good balance of the character abilities themselves versus the items they wear and carry, because what you don't want is for the magic items to be the star. You still want the player characters to be the stars. And we also want to ensure the items that we hand out don't derail our campaign. So, for example, let's say you hand the players a bunch of broomsticks of flying. Then, if you were counting on situations being challenges that they can just fly over, then you just made a campaign derailing mistake. Now, the Dungeon Master's Guide gives us a bit of guidance here, but I question the value of that guidance. I'll speak to that more later. According to Magic Item Rarity, here's how a DM can handle this challenge. Rarity provides a rough measure of an item's power relative to other magic items. Bullshit! Each rarity corresponds to character level, as shown in the Magic Item Rarity table. A character doesn't typically find a rare magic item, for example, until around 5th level. So, as we can see from this chart, that according to the Dungeon Master's Guide, we should probably be careful about awarding rare magic items until around 5th level, very rare items until around 11th level, and legendary items until those very high levels. And apparently, common and uncommon items are safe to award right from level 1, and by level 5, we should start seeing rare magic items. And in fairness, sometimes that is safe. But, of course, there's exceptions. Maybe a legendary item falls into the hands of the players and the campaign is largely centered around them keeping out of the hands of some great evil enemy. I mean, this is maybe the most common fantasy trope ever. Now, you probably want to think very carefully before introducing a legendary item to low-level characters. For example, if you hand them a Belt of Stormgiant Strength, it's likely going to give one party member a +9 strength modifier. That's almost certainly going to create a situation where a single party member is overshadowing others. If you hand them a deck of many things, that can completely destroy a campaign, and frankly can destroy a campaign of high level as well. But let's say you give them a Ring of Invisibility. Is that going to destroy your campaign? I don't think so. I mean, you need to know what it does, and you need to think about that. But if you've played with a player who's played a Gloomstalker Ranger who's in the dark, suddenly invisibility that breaks when you attack or cast a spell doesn't seem all that game-breaking. But how much can we rely on the game's rarity system? Not at all. It's practically useless. When we run a campaign, as I said, as a DM, we control what items are awarded. But what if we start at a higher level? Or we're just running a one-shot and the characters are a higher level. What magic items should they have? Well, if we're starting at a higher level, then page 38 of the Dungeon Master's Guide has a chart that looks like this. Interestingly, I noticed that suddenly magic items seem to be awarded more slowly than one might assume based on what they said on the magic item rarity chart in the same book. I mean, according to that chart, a character should be getting rare items typically by 5th level. But according to this chart, in a standard campaign, 17th level. Well, 5th level and 17th level are pretty far apart. Now, I guess that's maybe because they're figuring that a starting character would get less magic items than somebody who's been in a campaign for a while. Is that the idea? It's not really clear why such a huge disparity. And then some players will say that the Dungeon Master's Guide assumes that players are going to start with no magic items, regardless of their level, and that's not the case. Now, the book does say that it's up to the DM to decide whether higher level characters will have magic items, but it does give guidelines as to what is expected in a low magic, standard magic, or high magic campaign, and then again in the magic item tables as to rarity. So how do we use this information they gave us? Well, one method I've seen is hand the chart to the players. Here's the chart, choose what you like. More commonly, I see homebrew. So here's a list of magic items with prices. Buy what you like with this set amount of starting gold. I've also seen pick this many common items, pick this many uncommon items, and then your standard starting equipment, or maybe even any non-magical equipment you like. I've used multiple iterations of these various methods, and they're all pretty bad. The problem with each of these methods is you have the players choose their own magic items. And the problem with that is there is no assumption that players choose their own magic items in the game anywhere. Adding that in, it creates issues. So let's start with the problem with magic item design in general. And I am sorry to the designers, but this is so sloppy. I mean, here's the Spell Rot tattoo. This was introduced in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything like 1 year ago. So we had 6 years of 5th edition for designers to learn how to create magic items, and this is a mess. I mean, it reads, okay, produced by a special needle. This magic tattoo contains a single spell of up to 5th level, wrought on your skin by a magic needle. To use the tattoo, you must hold the needle against your skin and speak the command word. The needle turns into ink that becomes the tattoo, which appears on the skin in whatever design you like. Once the tattoo is there, you can cast its spell requiring no material components. The tattoo glows faintly while you cast the spell and for the spell's duration. Once the spell ends, the tattoo vanishes from your skin. The level of the spell in the tattoo determines the spell saving throw DC, attack bonus, spellcasting ability modifier, and the tattoo's rarity, as shown in the Spell Rot tattoo table. Okay, so unlike spell scrolls, these can be used by anyone. Character class, no longer a factor. Character level, no longer a factor. Yet the rarity ratings of the Spell Rot tattoos match spell scrolls. That's a problem right away. Oh, and artificers can make any common item as their infusion, which means they can make 2 first-level Spell Rot tattoos with their infusion slots, which they can hand out to other players, to familiars, to whomever. So now we have infinite find familiar loops and other problems. But there are bigger problems here. Because let's look closer at how this is written. Because I think the intention and the actual mechanical possibilities don't align. So for example, let's go with uncommon. So we have a 2nd level Spell Rot tattoo, and let's choose Aid as the spell. So here is Aid. When we cast Aid, we choose up to 3 creatures, which can include ourselves, within 30 feet. Each target's hit point maximum increases by 5, and their current hit points increase by 5 as well. Now, one common use of Aid is simply to use it for healing. So you use an action, and even ignoring the hit point maximum increase, current hit points increase by 5, so 15 points of healing spread amongst 3 creatures. And that's at range, as an action. That's not bad for a 2nd level spell. Now, the hit point maximum increase doesn't stack, so if I cast Aid on a creature with 50 hit points maximum, they go to 55 hit points, but if I cast it on them again, this doesn't increase again. But if that creature drops to 50 current hit points, and I cast it on them again, then they would have their current hit points increased by 5 again, because that's not stacking with anything, since the current hit points gained from the last casting are gone. Now, let's say we have this as a Spell Rot tattoo, and you're going to see why this is a problem. So we cast it at the start of the day. Does the tattoo disappear? No, because according to the item description, the tattoo glows faintly while we cast a spell and for the spell's duration, not vanishing until the spell ends. The duration of Aid is 8 hours, so as written, nothing is preventing us from casting Aid again on the following round, or any of the following rounds for the next 8 hours until the spell's duration expires. This is obviously broken. because it gets out of hand, right? You cast 8 on yourself and 2 party members, and that would be the value of a second level spell. But then we're going to cast it on the other party members, and then we're going to cast it on familiars or pets or summon creatures. Then we're going to use it whenever we need healing to get everyone boosted up. We can see this is obviously broken. But in fairness, I think we can pretty clearly see how the tattoo is intended to work. They just messed up on it. I mean, why didn't they just say it could only be cast once? But instead they said, well, the tattoo is on your skin, you can cast a spell. And then they specifically say the spell doesn't vanish until the duration expires. And that's what creates this loophole. But as a DM, I mean, we can just clarify, no, you can only cast a spell once. But frankly, that actually doesn't fix the entire problem. It fixes part of the problem. We still have the issue that the rarity was probably messed up as well. Maybe it all should have been moved up one level. But now we're getting into like serious house ruling. And are we going to go through all the magic items like this? Because I'll tell you what, spell rot tattoos aren't the biggest problem. So let's say you are awarding magic items by rarity. I'm here to tell you that magic item rarity is a terrible determination of item power. If you think something like challenge rating doesn't work in Dungeons & Dragons, you haven't looked closely at magic item rarity. Let me give you an example. So you are running a 5th level one-shot, and you provide all players the chance to choose one uncommon item. Now, a reminder, the Dungeon Master's Guide said 5th level is the point where you should start receiving rare magic items. We figure one uncommon item has got to be safe. But you know what? Maybe to be a bit more safe, we're going to say you can only choose from the Dungeon Master's Guide. That's going to keep spell rot tattoos out of it, and any of the the weird magic items that sometimes show up in adventures, we'll keep them out of it. Just the base rules, that's what you can choose from. That's got to be safe. I mean, maybe they take a +1 weapon, or a +1 shield, or Boots of Elvenkind, something like that. That's fine for a 5th level character. And maybe some do choose that. But one of them chooses Staff of the Python. This is one, but not the only example of a magic item where the rarity makes no sense. Here is the Staff of the Python. It reads, you can use an action to speak this staff's command word and throw the staff on the ground within 10 feet of you. The staff becomes a giant constrictor snake under your control and acts on its own initiative count. By using a bonus action to speak the command word again, you can return the staff to its normal form in a space formerly occupied by the snake. On your turn, you can mentally command the snake if it's within 60 feet of you and you aren't incapacitated. You decide what action the snake takes and where it moves during its next turn, or you can issue it a general command such as to attack your enemies or guard a location. If the snake is reduced to 0 hit points, it dies and it reverts to its staff form. The staff then shatters and is destroyed. If the snake reverts to staff form before losing all its hit points, it regains all of them. Okay, that doesn't sound so bad, right? But maybe we should read it a bit more carefully. I know I had a player who did. First, let's look at what it summons. Here is the giant constrictor snake. It's a challenge rating 2 creature. It is huge size, 9 squares, 60 hit points, blind sight, +6 attack, does 13 points of damage average, and automatically grapples and restrains the target it hits. Let's compare that to what we can assume from a player character. So if we have a 5th level fighter, they're probably sitting at fewer hit points than that. They might have a +6 to hit. They cover a single 5-foot square, and they're not restraining anything. The wizard might restrain enemies with something like web spells or that kind of thing, but they're using concentration and resources. Okay, so the giant constrictor snake is pretty good. But then again, it does have a 12 armor class. Eventually it's going to have even that significant amount of hit points whittled down, and then no problem, right? Wrong. Let's go back to the item description. Using the staff as an action, which creates a giant constrictor snake. Then, when our turn comes up and that snake isn't doing so well, what can we do? Well, first we issue a bonus action command word to revert the snake to its staff form. According to the item's description, if the snake reverts to staff form before losing all its hit points, it regains all of them. So that happens. Then we pick up the staff with our free object interaction. Then we use our action to, you guessed it, activate the staff, and now our giant constrictor snake is back to full hit points. How often can we do this? Well, there's no charges. In fact, there are no restrictions at all. A CR2 60 hit point giant creature under our command that automatically restrains on a +6 attack that we can basically heal to full hit points as often as we like, as long as we devote one turn to doing so. And this is apparently okay for a level 1 character, an uncommon item, but it is broken, still broken, at 5th level. Now, eventually, characters will achieve such a level that 60 hit points might be gone within a round, no problem. And at that point, this item is essentially a consumable. But until then, until enemies are consistently doing 60 hit points of damage a round, and that's a ways off, at these low levels, this just breaks the campaign. That's an uncommon item. Let's compare. This is Dragon Scale Mail. This is a very rare item. So this is 2 full levels over the staff. And according to the Dungeon Master's Guide, not safe to give a player character until around a level 11, supposedly. So what does it do? Well, it's +1 scale mail, which is equivalent to non-magical half plate, which costs 750 gold pieces. I would expect, in most campaigns, a level 3 or 4 character could just buy it. And it gives a resistance to a single damage type, all of which are available to a first level character by racial selection alone. And other than that, you get some circumstantial dragon related stuff that isn't very powerful. I mean, there's the fact a druid can wear this, so I guess there's that. But could you give this to a first level character? Yeah, no problem. And it wouldn't break a thing. This is a very rare magic item, but I promise you, you give this to a first level character and the staff of a python to another, the staff is what's going to suck all the excitement out of your campaign, not the scale mail. And these aren't one magic item rarity level apart. These are multiple magic item rarity levels apart. So what is the point of magic item rarity when uncommon items are more powerful than very rare items? Then again, sometimes the very rare items are more powerful. It seems to be random. And if we want to talk about how crazy uncommon items can get, imagine you have a party of 4, and then you tell them each to pick one uncommon magic item. So maybe 2 take Staff of the Python, and maybe 2 take Broomsticks of Flying. And remember, Broomstick of Flying can carry up to 2 creatures. So 2 constantly fully regenerating huge snakes, and a party that can swoop down to regenerate them every turn, then can disengage to a safe height. Heck, maybe they have ways to spam temporary hit points or boost armor class as well. And yeah, that sounds really boring. And the campaign is destroyed, and the characters are invincible. And that was one uncommon magic item each. But maybe your solution is no magic items at all. Players often point out that there's no assumption of magic items for higher level characters in D&D. And that's not untrue. They're not lying, but it is definitely misleading. Yes, the Dungeon Master's Guide says that starting equipment for characters above first level is entirely at your discretion as the DM. But that's not the same as saying that we have created the game assuming high-level characters don't have magic items. I mean, they clearly didn't. How many creatures require magic weapons to bypass resistance or even immunity? Clearly they assumed that some magic items were going the player's way. Never mind that even the low magic starting equipment table still assumes magic items at some point. So I don't think no magic items is a solution either. And that leads us to 2 pieces of advice I have for DMs dealing with this quandary. The first is for DMs running campaigns. Every single time you hand a magic item to the party, make sure you know what it does. Don't assume because an item is uncommon, it won't break your game. In D&D, you need to read the item description, and then you need to think. And by no means should you be saying, the magic item vendor likes your party, everyone gets to pick an uncommon item. Don't do that. Also, don't be afraid to just create your own custom magic items for your players. I mean, you may not be experienced in magic item creation, but you think you'll do worse than the professionals? I don't think so. But if you're running a higher level one-shot, is the solution no magic items? Well, unless you want to force your players to find ways to get their own magic weapons, then no. But you could do that. Between the magic weapon spell, artificer infusions, pact weapons, sacred weapon, magic arrows, blessing of the forge, keen powered strikes, primal strike, shillelagh, and more, there are a plethora of options available to players to have their attacks treated as magical. So if you want that to be part of the challenge of character creation, I don't think that's a huge problem as long as the players are aware of that challenge. But if you want the magic items in your game, because frankly it's D&D and magic items kind of feel like they should be part of D&D, they've been pretty integral, then maybe you need to be choosing the items for your players. Have them submit their characters to you, and then you pick an item or two that you think would be useful to them. And once again, only after you know what the item does. Or maybe you're running a one-shot and you already know what magic items might be handy, so you give them to the players and let them choose from that list on their own. But when it comes to just letting players choose their own magic items based on rarity, well, I find it just doesn't work. You see the same items over and over again, and other items not at all. And again, rarity is a terrible indicator of item power. It doesn't work at all. I did a search online to see if there was a good indicator for magic item prices. I found one on DM's Guild. I bought it. I found one that had been shared online called Seeing Magical Prices, and I picked that up as well. I have tried both of them, and neither worked at all. The game is not designed for player characters to not have magic items. That's just not a thing. But it is also not designed for players to choose their own magic items. Yeah, it seems easier to do it that way, but it just doesn't work well. So my advice, either the DM picks the magic items or creates their own items, and that way the control of this massive variable is right where it should be. And that's my 2 cents on this topic. Until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.